Up next in the broadcast, Kiev and Moscow agreed to a permanent ceasefire in a region of eastern Ukraine, according to Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko, who said he hammered out the deal in a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. IS militants released a new video of the second journalist to be beheaded and taped on camera. The release of the footage came with a warning to U.S. President Barack Obama to halt airstrikes in Iraq. And President Park underscores her push to revive the economy and create new jobs by moving ahead with deregulation reforms and clamping down on unnecessary bureaucracy. Primetime News begins now. Welcome to Primetime News on this Wednesday evening. Live from Seoul, I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang Chery. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We start off in Ukraine, where a much anticipated step to establish peace in the eastern part of the country has been reached, as Kiev says that President Petro Poroshenko and Russian President Vladimir Putin have agreed on a permanent ceasefire in that region.
Poroshenko's press office announced that he and Putin reached the agreement over the phone for a ceasefire in the Donbass region. That area includes the cities of Donetsk and Luhansk, which have been at the center of the heaviest fighting between pro-Russian separatists and Ukrainian forces. Earlier, Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, made a similar statement saying the two largely coincided on what needed to be done to resolve Ukraine's 6-month-old crisis. However, the spokesman made no mention of a ceasefire, saying that Russia was not a party to the conflict to begin with and therefore cannot physically agree to it. Regarding the matter, U.S. President Barack Obama said it's too early to tell what the ceasefire means and that the halt could only be effective if Russia stopped pretending it was not active in the conflict. There was no immediate sign of stopped fighting between Ukrainian forces and pro-Russian rebels in the region.
Back in March, President Park Geunhye held a rare 7-hour televised meeting to stress the need for regulatory reforms to spur growth. She checked back on the progress earlier today, and she was not satisfied with the pace of deregulation. Our Choi Yoo-sun reports.
내년 중에는 그런 쪽들은 좀 허용이 될 수 있도록 이렇게 하겠습니다.
내년이요?
예, 이 법을 개정을 좀 해야 되는 상황입니다. 본법을.
저기 오염시키는 그것이 경미할 경우에는 그 허용할 수도 있다 그런 규정도 있다면서요?
Following up on the government's deregulation efforts, President Park impelled officials to actively carry through the reforms. She urged the government and parliament to swiftly pass related bills so that Korea doesn't miss an opportunity to pull itself out from an economic slowdown. The government said it has nearly completed 4/5 of the reforms from March, while about a dozen others await parliamentary approval. For instance, a regulation that required employers to report to both the Labor and Justice ministries about changes made to contracts with foreign employees was lifted, simplifying the hiring process. Laws have been revised to allow food trucks to operate inside amusement parks, with hopes to offer more startup opportunities, create jobs, and diversified food culture. The president, who postponed the follow-up 2 weeks ago to give officials more time to complete the reforms, couldn't stress enough the need to achieve tangible results.
먼저 많은 것을 하겠다고 계획만 발표하기보다는 하나의 규제라도 제대로 풀어서 국민들이 그 효과를 피부로 느끼도록 해야 합니다.
For her deregulation drive to maintain its momentum and start unleashing growth, President Park called for incentives and penalties regarding reforms for public employees and better cooperation between the central and local governments. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News.
Legislators here in Seoul voted on whether to strip a ruling party lawmaker of his immunity from arrest on this Wednesday. Our National Assembly correspondent Ji Myung-gil has the result of this vote, as well as what the lawmaker is being accused of.
Ruling Saenuri Party lawmakers Hong Kwang-oh will remain immune from arrest for the remainder of the 100-day regular parliamentary session.
Among a total of 223 votes, 73 are in favor, 118 are against, 8 have abstained, and 24 are invalid. The arrest motion for lawmakers Song Kwang-ho is rejected.
The four-term lawmaker stands accused of taking some $63,000 in bribes in 2012 from local railway supplier AVT in exchange for business favors. At the time, Song was the chairman of the Parliamentary Land and Maritime Committee, which oversees the Korea Rail Network Authority. Before the plenary vote, Song was given a chance to make a personal address.
I have been accused of taking bribes from a train component maker, but I have never been asked to give favors to any railway part supplier and have never pressured them for money.
By law, Korean lawmakers are immune from arrest during parliamentary sessions. If Wednesday's motion had passed, Song's immunity would have been stripped. The stage for today's vote was set by a prosecution-led anti-corruption campaign. The ruling Saenuri party said it would not stand in the way of the investigation. Regarding the hundreds of pending bills related to stimulating the economy, they went untouched during Wednesday's plenary session as the rival parties continued their discord over the special Seoul ferry bill. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Well, the previous speculation has now been confirmed. A top North Korean diplomat will visit Geneva for talks next week in the first such move in 20 years. Swiss daily Le Temps reports that Kang Chery, a key figure in North Korea's foreign affairs, is set to meet with a Swiss State Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Yves Rossier, during his 3-day trip. Kang is also regarded as the point man when it comes to North Korea's nuclear weapons program. Switzerland has been the only nation thus far to accept talks with Kang during his European tour, which will also take him to Germany, Belgium, and Italy. Switzerland's foreign ministry says it will seek to foster understanding between Geneva and Pyongyang in the talks. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has carried out a major executive reshuffle, his first since returning to office in December 2012. While keeping core ministers, he's added 5 women to his cabinet and appointed China-friendly lawmakers to key party posts. Kim Min-ji reports on the new team.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Wednesday appointed 2 veteran lawmakers with close ties to China to key party posts in an apparent bid to improve frosty relations with Beijing. Abe appointed outgoing Justice Minister Sadakazu Danigaki as the Secretary General of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party and Toshihiro Nikai to a second top post. This shakeup is seen as a move to strengthen party unity and revamp his image as his approval rating has dipped to around 50%. Meanwhile, Abe's main political rival Shigeru Ishiba, who turned down the national security legislation post, will assume a newly created cabinet post aimed at boosting regional economies. Former senior vice defense minister Akinori Eto will take on the security legislation post as well as the defense minister position. Abe said his new team will focus on lifting the country out of deflation.
Putting the economy as the new cabinet's top priority, we will do all we can to end the deflation and to implement our growth strategies.
Abe retained 6 of the 18 ministers, including Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga and Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida. The Prime Minister also tapped 5 women to cabinet positions, matching the record set in 2001. Yuko Obuchi, the daughter of a former Prime Minister, was named the new Trade Minister, and former Gender Equality Minister Sanae Takaichi will now take over as Communications Minister. This shakeup is Abe's first since returning to office 20 months ago, marking the longest record since the Second World War. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang Sean Lim and Kang Chery from the heart of Seoul.
Begins now.
Primetime News, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Samsung Electronics has been on a rough ride as of late, struggling to deal with fierce competition from cheaper manufacturers in China. The company's share price is at a two-year low, and profits are forecast to continue slipping. Our Kwon-soa has more.
Shares in Samsung Electronics are on the slide, with the company's stock slumping below the 1.2 million won, or roughly $1,180 mark, for the first time in 2 years on Tuesday. This comes as local brokerage houses have been slashing their estimates for the Korean tech giant's third quarter operating income. While last year's third quarter figure was some $10 billion, the average estimate of 27 local brokerages for the same quarter this year stands at less than $6.9 billion. That's a drop of over 30% in the space of a year. The lower end of the projections made by brokerage firms such as Hyundai Securities were even below $6 billion. Industry observers attribute the worries to the growing competition as other mobile manufacturers are threatening Samsung's overseas sales. In particular, China's Xiaomi has emerged as a serious contender, selling more smartphones in China in the second quarter than Samsung could muster. Samsung's second quarter operating profit was disappointing, coming in at slightly over $7 billion. That's down nearly 25% from a year before. Although the Korean firm's smartphone sales are expected to rise by 7% in quarter three, analysts say intensifying competition from Chinese manufacturers as well as Apple will force Samsung to put more of its profits into its marketing budget. Kwon-soa, Arirang News.
Korea's 10 biggest conglomerates currently make up more than half of the Korea's bourse's main index's total market capitalization, and their listed affiliates are adding more value by the year. The Korea Exchange says the market cap of the country's 10 conglomerate groups has increased by 35% over the past 4 years to about $644 billion. Samsung Group dug in its heels at the top at $276 billion. Followed by Hyundai Motor Group, which logged about half that total. SK Group saw the biggest rise, more than doubling its figure from 4 years ago, boosted by its acquisition of chipmaker SK Hynix. The stakes owned by the conglomerate's biggest shareholders stood at 29% on average, with Lotte Group the highest at 57%.
Technology has broken down once mighty barriers to education by allowing students to take classes from anywhere around the world free of charge. And with more universities joining in the movement for open online courses, our Yu Lian tells us how the trend offers a glimpse into the education of tomorrow.
Learn everywhere, anywhere. That's now possible thanks to the power of technology, more specifically through cloud-based interconnectivity, which allows students to take classes online through multiple electronic devices. Massive open online courses, or MOOCs, have seen explosive growth in the past 2 years. A group of experts and founders of MOOC services gathered in Seoul physically and virtually on Wednesday to talk about why the paradigm shift in education has come at precisely the right time.
We also have a whole new generation of students. They are very individualistic, and it's oftentimes easier to text and tweet and Snapchat and WhatsApp and Facebook your children than it is to talk to them in person.
The online education world is also evolving through the use of big data.
The maximum student engagement was when videos were 6 minutes long. So we can gather data and answer some of these questions about how are students learning, what resources are most valued by students, how should we teach. So our hope is that with this big data of learning, we can begin to answer some of these questions.
While the method in which education is being provided is important, so is the content themselves. There's now a stronger call to digitize textbooks as well.
Textbooks are a billion-dollar market globally, and yet they seem to confound attempts to digitize them. I actually think that if anything should have been digitized first in our culture, it really should have been educational books, textbooks.
The online courses are particularly appealing for people who cannot afford to attend university. But pundits say a day where most of ordinary students attend online lectures while reading a digitalized textbook written by a professor that's halfway across the world may come sooner than expected. Yudian, Arirang News.
A hit Korean reality TV program is headed to America. Korean entertainment giant CJ E&M says Grandpas Over Flowers, which features older celebrities backpacking in foreign lands, has been sold to U.S. broadcast company NBC. Better Late Than Never, as it will be called in the U.S., will follow the exact format of its Korean predecessor, albeit with American celebrities doing the traveling. It's expected to debut early next year. Wednesday's news comes on the heels of another announcement last week that the hit Korean drama Good Doctor will be remade in the United States on the CBS television network.
Another horrific video has been released by Islamic State militants showing the beheading of another American journalist whose life was actually threatened 2 weeks ago in an earlier execution video for James Foley.
For this and other international headlines, we turn to Son Jung-in at the News Center. Jung-in, how is the U.S. government responding to this latest incident?
Well, as the intelligence officials verify the authenticity of the footage, President Barack Obama promised to continue the fight against IS. He acknowledged that it would be a long process, but said that Washington was determined to destroy the militant group. Our Hwang Sung-hee has more.
It's titled A Second Message to America, and it's a message that's just as brutal as the first. The video shows another American hostage dressed in an orange jumpsuit on his knees next to a masked man dressed in black and holding a knife. The beheading of U.S. journalist Steven Sotloff was posted online Tuesday by the Islamic State with a warning to President Obama to halt airstrikes in Iraq.
So just as your missiles continue to strike our people, our knife will continue to strike the necks of your people.
The masked man's voice is the same, an apparently British voice, as the world heard on the video of James Foley's murder a fortnight ago. Mr. Sotloff, a 31-year-old freelance journalist from Miami, disappeared while reporting from Syria in August last year, but his family had kept the news secret, fearing harm to him if they went public. Last week, Mr. Sotloff's mother issued a video appeal, pleading with the militants to spare her son.
As a mother, I ask your justice to be merciful and not punish my son for matters he has no control over.
In an effort to help battle Islamic State, President Obama announced Tuesday he will send around 350 additional military personnel to Iraq to protect U.S. diplomatic facilities and workers in Baghdad. The masked man in the latest video also shows who he claims to be a British national, identified on screen as David Haynes, and makes it clear he is also now at risk. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Moving on to the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, aid organizations fighting to contain the disease in the region have appealed for urgent international assistance. The agencies claim that if not stopped, the Ebola virus could very well threaten peace and security beyond the borders of Africa, and they're calling for a stronger global approach before it's too late. Our Connie Kim has more details.
Aid organizations battling to contain the worst ever outbreak of Ebola have issued separate but very similar demands. They say international intervention is needed to stem the spread of the deadly virus, calling it a global problem, not just something confined to West Africa. Doctors Without Borders, the group spearheading medical efforts in affected countries, says the fight is being lost, with treatment centers being reduced to places where people go to die alone.
6 months into the worst Ebola epidemic in history, the world is losing the battle to contain it. Leaders are failing to come to grip with this transnational threat.
In a separate speech in the U.S., the head of the National Public Health Agency warned the epidemic is spiraling out of control, with infection numbers rising fast.
There is a window of opportunity to tamp this down, but that window is closing. We need action now to scale up the response.
Frieden went on to say the answer to this outbreak comes down to three things: resources, technical experts in healthcare and management, and a global, coordinated, and unified approach. The World Health Organization, criticized for not acting sooner to bring the outbreak under control, reports that more than 3,000 people have been infected in West Africa, but this could rise to 20,000 and spread to more countries. Meanwhile, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization has issued a food security alert for Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, which are the countries most affected by the outbreak. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And finally, the latest in the massive celebrity photo leak, Apple issued an official statement confirming that a number of celebrity accounts were targeted and compromised. However, the tech giant was quick to defend itself, saying that none of the cases were a result of a security breach on iCloud or the Find My iPhone service. Actress Jennifer Lawrence and model Kate Upton were among the dozens of female celebrities whose private nude photos were hacked and uploaded onto a website, triggering security concerns. Apple said following a 40-hour probe that its engineers believe the hackers likely employed users' names, passwords, and security questions to gain access to the accounts, which they say is common in the internet. And that wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow evening.
Hello and welcome to sports. The Asian Para Games will be held after the Asian Games in Incheon, and in a groundbreaking first, North Korea will send its para-athletes to compete with their peers. The Asian Paralympic Committee said on Wednesday they had received North Korea's application and athlete roster a day earlier and passed it over to organizers. Now they're sending 9 athletes along with related personnel. It'll likely be led by Lee Boon-hee, who together with South Korea's Hyun Jung-hwa famously took the team gold at the 1991 World Table Tennis Championships under a unified flag. Well, the Asian Para Games open on October 18th. And meanwhile, in preparation for the Asian Games, South Korea's shooting team led by ace Jin Jong-ho is headed to the World Shooting Championships. Among the 64 shooters taking part, Jin is the one to keep in sight. The 3-time Olympic gold medalist has won individual golds at the last 2 games, but has yet to earn one at the Worlds as well as the Asian Games. The first group of Koreans left for Granada, Spain on Wednesday, with the competition opening on Saturday. And moving on, the KBO canceled games due to rain, but the K-League Classic was still on for Wednesday's matchup between the Samsung, or rather Suwon Samsung Blue Wings and Busan I-Park. Now, match week 24 kicked off at Suwon World Cup Stadium, and the home team started aggressively, and they're awarded in the 21st minute. As Shinsege's cross comes in, Rogers dropped in the box, and he converts the penalty kick. Now fast forward to the second half, 60th minute, free kick by Kim Ik-hyun. It misses all the heads, but not the back of the net. And it gets level 1-1 and stays that way as the time winds down. Final score between Suwon and Busan, 1-1. And looking overseas, the field has whittled down further on day 9 at the U.S. Open after a display of some of the tournament's top tennis. For the men, Roger Federer dominated at the net to reach the quarterfinals for the 10th time in 11 years. He dropped in the 4th round last year. Thomas Berdych also made his way to the final 8. Now for the ladies, Caroline Wozniacki knocked out Sara Errani with ease, dropping just 1 game in the match, and now heads to a Grand Slam semi for the first time since 2011. She faces China's Shuai Peng in the next round. And finally, the world's fastest man, Usain Bolt, said that it would be cool to race a cheetah and see the headline, Bolt beats cheetah. But even with the world record speed of almost 45 kilometers per hour, a cheetah can run more than twice as fast. Well, he may not win that race, but he did win his charity cricket match in India, so there you go. Well, that wraps it up for sports. This has been Stephen Che. Stay tuned for the weather, which is up next.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather updates. It was a rainy day here in Seoul with similar conditions experienced in most parts of the country. Areas in the east are experiencing heavy downpours as rain clouds continue to hover there. So through later tonight, 10 to 40 millimeters is expected on the southern coast of Gyeongsang-namdo province, while less than 5 millimeters will drop over Seoul as well as Chungcheongdo and Jeollado provinces. Tomorrow looks to be a much clearer day for the central regions, but there is a slight chance of sporadic showers for areas down south. We'll also feel the mercury rise a couple of degrees compared to today. Now, Chuseok, which is one of Korea's most celebrated national holidays, is only a few days away, and some good news as weather will be on our side with sunny skies in the forecast. On to Thursday's readings. Seoul, Gwangju, and Busan hit the high 20s, while Daegu reaches 30. On to other places. Daejeon and Jeju make it to 27, Dokdo and Mangkumgang to 26 and 28. That's all for this hour, but I'll be back with more updates after midnight. See you then.
Thank you very much, Bo-kyung. And that's Primetime News, and I'm Kang Chery.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.